Okay, everybody, we're gonna finish up the tour. Feel free to ignore me though if you just want to keep taking your pictures. I totally understand. It's very beautiful. I got a lot of questions about what that white mansion is that's on the horizon of the Toronto Islands, and the answer is that's my place. That's where I live. It's the Royal Canadian Yacht Club. So it's actually a very prestigious yacht club where a lot of Canadian celebrities have a boat there. Eugene Levy of Schitt's Creek has a boat there. So does the King of England. He used to have a boat there as well. But it's nowhere as prestigious as the amazing CN Tower. Has anyone here been to the CN Tower? Yeah? Did you guys take the elevator up to the top? Up the stairs? Okay. There's a set of stairs to the CN Tower, but they are closed to the public. It's because too many tourists kept trying to skip the elevator fee. They would get up 900 steps and then realize they were very tired, look around and see no washroom, no place to get water, and they would call the fire department, which only meant that a firefighter would have to climb up 900 steps, pick you up, and carry you back down. So that happened one too many times, so the CN Tower just said no more, and they closed the stairs to the public. They're only open twice a year for charity events called Stepathons. Anybody want to guess the fastest time up the stairs to the CN Tower? Anyone want to guess? 1 hour? Any other guesses? The actual answer is 7 minutes and 53 seconds. Yeah. And I was so tired. It was over. By a guy named Brenton Kenoy back in 1989. Keep in mind though, he was 6'7". He was also a triathlete. He was a volunteer firefighter. He definitely skipped a few steps on his way up there. But there have been some other sillier records set on the stairs. There was the fastest time down the stairs, 5 minutes. That was set by a guy who wrapped himself up in bubble wrap and threw himself down. And there was also a woman who went up on a pogo stick that took her 10 minutes. Once you get to the top, as you guys know, there's tons of stuff to do. There's a little sky deck. You can look down on Toronto. There's also a rotating restaurant. You can sit and eat at, and it rotates while you eat. And there's also the edge walk, which is where you walk on the outskirts of the CN Tower in a bungee cord and in a jumpsuit. Very scary. But CN Tower was named after CN Railways. What does a railway have to do with a radio tower? Great question. I'll answer it. Basically, the reason the CN Tower was built has a lot to do with something going on in Quebec, actually. During the early 70s, Quebec was going through its first of many separatist periods, which meant that they wanted to become their own country. And this really freaked out the banks that were headquartered in Montreal, because at the time, Montreal was the financial capital of Canada. So they did not want to be trapped in a new country. So all the banks actually fled here. And where the money goes, people follow. So as a result, we had a huge population boom. Union Station became the busiest station in all of North America, so CN Railways needed a radio tower to control communication between all their trains. They thought, well, why don't we just put ourselves on the map, build the tallest tower in the world, right? Of course, we've only retained that title for about 10 years or so. We are still, though, the tallest concrete-based structure in the Western Hemisphere. Yeah. So as long as we keep getting more and more specific with those records, we will always have some kind of record. If you're wondering what those pink umbrellas are, that's Sugar Beach over there. It's a city beach. You can't really jump into water because the harbor water is too dirty to swim in. There is sand. Sugar Beach is named after the Redpath Sugar Refinery, which is the big factory we're going by right now on your right. This is the only remaining operating factory along the waterfront, it actually manufactures 85% of Ontario's sugar. So if you had sugar in your coffee this morning, odds are it was made right there at this factory. This factory supplies a lot of the sugar that goes to the United States because the United States refuses to trade with Cuba. Cuba sends their sugar here to Toronto, we process it, and then we send it to the United States. It's a very roundabout way of them to get their sugar, but I suppose it works. Also got a couple questions about what that industrial area is behind our boat with the smokestacks. That area is called the Portlands. That's a lot what Toronto used to look like pre-revitalization. There's actually a Netflix studio out there. Like I said, film is Toronto's second leading industry. There's tons of stuff that's filmed here. We have a lot of co-production treaties with other countries. They come here and take advantage of our tax breaks to film their projects. For example, American Psycho, despite being called American Psycho, was filmed here in Toronto. Good Will Hunting, Stranger Things, Umbrella Academy, and the list goes on. 60% of the Toronto skyline, by the way, is residential. If you're looking out into the skyline right now, a lot of these buildings are condos. It's not a condo, it's probably a bank building. And 60% of Toronto also happens to be immigrants, so a lot of people who live here were not born here. With that being said, does anybody want to guess some of the top 10 languages spoken in Toronto? Number 1 is English. Are there any guesses? French? I'm so sorry to trick you, but French actually comes in at number 12. Very surprising. It's their second official language of Canada, but like I said, city of immigrants. If you're immigrating to Canada, you're probably not going to come to Ontario. You're going to go to our next door neighbor, Quebec, where their language laws ensure you'll get a better job. I'm sorry to shoot you down. But there's any other guesses? No? No one wants to participate? No one wants to talk to me today? There's also Portuguese is in the top 10, Chinese is in the top 10, Tagalog is in the top 10, Mandarin, Cantonese, Tamil, Urdu, and Korean just beat out Italian on the new census. Sorry, Italians. Also on your right, you'll see in a second the ferry dock. This is the ferry terminal. If you wanted to go to the Toronto Islands, this is the way you can do so. There's about 3 main ferries that leave every half hour. One goes to Hanlan's Point, one goes to Ward's Island, and one goes to Center Island. It's about almost $5 for one-way fare, so definitely a good deal. But I'd honestly recommend, and it's free on the way back, but I would honestly recommend taking the more expensive option, which is the water taxi. You've probably seen them buzzing around the harbor. They're these boxy little cars. They buzz back and forth from the shore to the islands. It's about $12, $13 each way, so substantially more expensive than the ferry. But I would definitely recommend it if you're impatient like me. It will shave about 2 hours off of your trip. For example, on the weekends, the ferry lines on the way back, because it's free on the way back, can average about 2 hours. I personally could not do it. On your right, this beige building, the Toronto Star, that's our favorite newspaper here in Toronto. But this was actually voted the ugliest building in Toronto in the Toronto Star poll. Toronto Star once asked readers what they believed to be the ugliest building in Toronto, and readers said, the Toronto Star. So they were forced to publish an article deeming themselves the ugliest building in Toronto. But the CN Tower is the birthplace of the Toronto Star is the birthplace of Superman. The co-creator of Superman is in fact Canadian. His name is Joe Shuster. He worked at the Toronto Star in the 1920s as a paperboy. So it's said that the Toronto Star is what they base Superman working at a newspaper of, and Metropolis is based on Toronto. The more you know. There's also the Weston building you can see on your right. That's a hotel, but that building's actually where they derived the idea for the rotating restaurant for the CN Tower. This one, however, no longer rotates because it was struck by lightning. It's very sad. And then there's a park underneath the Weston building. Very nice park to walk around, would definitely recommend it. But I will caution you, there was some controversy at that park a few years ago. Does anybody remember the game Pokemon Go? Very popular. There used to be a very popular Pokestop along this park. So popular that people are often out here in swarms trying to get Pokemon. A few people dropped their phones into the water and one person fell in. So the city of Toronto actually had to reach out to Pokemon Go, asking them to move the Pokestop. Towering above the park is the these 2 beige condos. These beige L-shaped condos were actually the first condos ever built along the Toronto waterfront back during the 70s when nobody really wanted to live here. So these condos actually took a very long time to sell out. The owners were putting in tons of incentives like free parking, free utilities, free AC, and dirt cheap rents, and still nobody wanted to live out here. There was a guy who bought out 6 units in those condos, and he was ridiculed by the Toronto Star for being the dumbest investor of all time. But of course we know now he's probably the smartest, because those units can go for at least $2 million. That's just for a closet. Just to show you how much things changed over the course of 10 years, those beige condos, which were built in the 70s, took 5 years to sell out. The ones beside them with the blue windows were built in the 80s and took 2 days to sell out. So things changed very rapidly here in Toronto.